Application Longevity for Dummies with Rod Paddock.
The Azure DevOps Podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Each show brings you hard-hitting interviews with industry experts, innovating better methods, and sharing success stories. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jeffrey Palermo, your host for helping you and your teams move fast, deliver quality, and to run your software with confidence in Azure, all while using everything that the .NET ecosystem has to offer. The podcast is sponsored by ClearMeasure, a software architecture company that empowers .NET teams to be self-sufficient and able to deliver world-class results. They are hiring architects and .NET engineers who'd like a path to become an architect. So you can go to clearmeasure.com/careers. And my guest today on the show is a returning guest, Rod Paddock, and he has a company called Dashpoint Software. He's also the editor-in-chief of Code Magazine. In 2001, Rod founded Dashpoint Software to help develop high-quality custom software solutions, and over 30 plus, we'll just stop counting years of experience. Some of his current and past clients include Six Flags, First Premier Bank, Microsoft, Calamos Investments, U.S. Coast Guard, Navy, and along with developing software, he's also a well-known author and conference speaker. Since 1995, he's given talks and training sessions and keynotes in the U.S., Canada, and Europe, and probably another continent he's forgotten about. But Rod was also a guest way back on the show in episode 111, so you can go back in the archives and listen to his podcast there. But Rod, welcome back to the show. How are you, sir?
Hey, doing good. How are you doing this morning?
I'm good. We were talking before the show. We only live about an hour's drive away from each other, but even that in the past season, besides just kind of getting together with longtime friends, the state of remote work has kind of changed over the last few years. But before we get into that, there's probably plenty of listeners who haven't seen you speak or whatnot, and are getting to know you for the first time. What are some of the memorable things in your career that's kind of led you up to what you're working on today?
Memorable things in my career that for $3,000, Link.
That's right.
I've been lucky. My speaking career started way back in the day, and actually I have a number of funny, silly stories that I have from way back then. When I got rid of my real job and I became a consultant, so I was no longer had a real job, and entered the consulting business. I started teaching, and there is a company that I started teaching with called Application Developers Training Company, ADTC. And these guys basically carpet bombed mailing lists that they got from Microsoft with these pamphlets. They would mail, this is in the days of mail, not when everything got emailed to you. And so all of our little mug shots were on these things. And the list of people that you would know runs the gamut of people that you know now that are all over the industry. Paul Sheriff is one. Paul Litwin, I think, works at Microsoft now. Richard Campbell was a trainer. If you know one of your quote unquote podcasting competitors and friend of yours, he was a trainer with the company. So a lot of us were in this circuit. We were teaching things like Visual Basic 6. And I was teaching Fox Pro for Windows. This is before the Visual Fox Pro era. And then we moved into Visual Fox Pro.
The early 90s, roughly?
Yeah. So it would have been really at the high point of VB5, maybe we were doing at that point. We're also teaching Access and all kinds of fun stuff. So through connections or through, I don't know how it ever happened, I get a call from Microsoft going, we had somebody bail and we want you to come and present on this new product that we have called Back Office, which at that point was SQL Server. I think it was 4.2, maybe it was 6. It was Exchange. It was a bunch of other stuff. So anyway, and you have 2 days to build the whole presentation on half the stuff you don't even know about. I'm like, okay, I got to come in. You guys have to help me build this. So I roll into Microsoft. I spend 2 days with them building the deck, learning how to do all this stuff. And then I give a talk at the Visual Fox Pro Developers Conference in San Diego, which was a big deal then. It's like Bob Muglia was the keynote, who went on to found a company called Snowflake, if you've ever heard of that. So, and this was the big ta-da when Microsoft dumped a bunch of money on the Fox Pro product. So the funny story, and that's just a luck thing. I was in the right place at the right time. You got to give a talk, among these people. There were two awesome things at that event. One of the coolest things is where we got to have the speaker dinner that night. And I will tell you hands down right now, no speaker dinner will ever top where I had my speaker dinner that night. Guaranteed. Okay. Bring it on, entire world. We got to have dinner at Miramar. And if you remember what Miramar is a naval air base.
Oh,
and that the naval Miramar. Air base where they do this thing called Top Gun. Yeah. So we got to have dinner with Top Gun pilots at our tables. Nice. So all these guys, we had a huge spread, killer dinner. We got to go climb an F-4. We didn't get to fly in them, unfortunately, but we got to climb up and sit inside F-14s. So that was wicked cool. Nice. So that's one of the awesome, fun event stories that I've been fortunate enough. I consider myself extremely fortunate in my whole career, really honestly about that. And then the second one, which is kind of the funny, dumb celebrity kind of deal. I'm riding in the elevator at my hotel, and one of the people in the elevator, he elbows his wife and goes, "That's Rod Paddock." I'm like, what? Like, okay. And I'm trying to piece together, how do you know who I am by my face? Not because because I'm in the silly brochure that went out to 500,000 people or something like that. That was like that, and $3 would get you Starbucks, right? It's like, okay. So that was one of the funny, stupid events. So anyway, so it's kind of interesting as a kind of three different things. And this is very early on in my career, just to let you know, SQL Server 4260 era, that's how far back this went.
Yeah.
But, in terms of between now and then, I've had a lot of great, awesome experiences. I've been to Germany to speak. I did work in Amsterdam for a week and rode the train and back and forth to work doing Fox Pro code. I'm a long-term Fox Pro developer, not doing it anymore. Actually, I still run it because I have clients that have data in it. So last week I was in Fox Pro, believe it or not.
Yeah.
But I have this old adage, and there's a whole bunch of us. Marcus, that owns the magazine, and Rick Strahl, who's a very famous web developer guy, one of the most knowledgeable people in .NET that I know. We're all Fox Pro heads. Yeah. So we all live in the houses that Fox Pro built because we're all started consulting and we've done
right.
Knock on wood. Okay.
Sure.
So anyway, that's been a good thing. So that's kind of, I don't know if that's what you're looking for. Yeah. Those are some of the funny stories.
And for the people who get Code Magazine, they see your mug in there all the time. And for those who don't get Code Magazine, am I going too far on a limb to say there's no reason not to, that they should just go and sign up?
Go sign up. I think they have a lot of free subscription stuff. I don't handle the business end of it, but I know that there's lots of free subscriptions. And I bet if we ping a couple people, we can get you a code and people can let's do that. I'll see if I can get you guys a code that you can put it in your podcast notes and people can sign up for a free subscription.
Yeah. So nobody say anything, but I've run enough user groups where none of the user groups have actually had to pay. They've always gotten, some free codes. So
pretty much.
Yeah. Whisper.
So it's a good, honestly, it's a good magazine. And I have a long history with the magazine, and I have been editor in chief of the thing for, I think, going on 20 years now. I got hired over Instant Messenger. I've known
which
Marcus.
One? Which Instant Messenger? ICQ.
There you go, baby. ICQ. Everybody knows that noise when you hear it. You know it, right? You know that noise. That's unmistakable for any of us that were around in the early days of the internet. Yeah, I was on ICQ. Marcus hired me, and but the interesting story is, in terms of subscribers, I was the first paid subscriber to the magazine before I was the editor. We were all at a conference. and they started taking subscriptions. And I ran over there and I said, "Here's the credit card. Do you have any subscribers yet that have paid you?"
Yeah.
No. And I said, "Good. I'm number one." So I was the first person to pay for this. I don't pay for it anymore, obviously.
Right.
But we cater to more than just the .NET crowd. We run a very, very long list of languages and technologies. One of the ones that I find really interesting that we've been running lately is this thing called Laravel, which is essentially a an ASP stack built on PHP. And I look at the code in PHP, it's like that language has come a long way way over the years. Yeah. It's extremely interesting looking language now. And obviously it's never gone anywhere because it runs the backbone of so much of the internet.
Because of WordPress.
No, WordPress, well, also because Facebook is built on PHP as well. Yeah. Although it's a different level. I think they actually have things that turn PHP into C++ code. They have these weird recompiler things that are out there. So
you do tons of consulting with all kinds of clients. That world has totally changed. What's your observations on how remote work versus going back in the office? What are you seeing out there?
It's a very interesting one. I have probably half a dozen projects going on at any given time. Some of them are just long-term clients that have maintenance work, or others are really long-term, lots of work kind of clients. I can tell you one of them that's been a very interesting transformation is one of my clients in California. They had an office that had somewhere upwards of 100 people in it. They were bursting at the seams, and then the event happened, COVID, and everybody scattered, and they reconfigured their whole infrastructure to have a remote workforce. And so the interesting aspect of it is that the owner of the company, she has learned now that we don't have to be in the office to do what we do effectively. So she spends her time split between offices in California, and she bought a condominium in Seattle to be closer to her daughter. And then I was gabbing with her marketing director, and I'm like, "Are you going to fly up from LA to have these meetings in Seattle that we're at next week?" She's like, "Oh no, I moved to Seattle." So I had no idea that this person that I interact with on Teams every other day moved from Hermosa Beach, California to Seattle because they're dispersed.
Yeah.
So their entire workforce has been dispersed, and they have no desire to go back to the concept of making people commute into the office.
Yeah.
Although we are having meetings, it's just selective meetings. It's let's get together. I don't care what people say. When you're in the room with people with a whiteboard and a couple of pens, and you can free-form communications through the room, you can do a lot of creative stuff. It's all quality time, because then when you're there, it's not the humdrum meetings that you just go to just for the sake of meetings. We do all those remotely now. So, but I'm finding now this is the case, is that we're starting to get back together, but it's selective when we do it. And it's very, very focused, high productivity time. It's really quality time. So we're on a big greenfield project for them now that we're just starting, and we've had 2 meetings so far, and we're on a monthly cadence. So I'm on planes again, which I actually don't mind. I like being gone. My wife appreciates me being gone now and again. I got tired of staring at the 4 walls of my office at home every day. And so there's that. So their whole workforce is dispersed. People, their lifestyle's a lot better, because in the Los Angeles area, everybody commutes. There's an old missing person song called "Nobody Walks in LA," and it's 100% true. Nobody does. Everybody commutes. Nobody lives like New York City, where you ride the subway 4 miles to work.
Yeah.
Everybody drives 60 miles to work, which is an hour to 2 every day. So lots of people are getting essentially 20 hours a week back, just not commuting, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then, there's all kinds of advantages. The big difference for me is it's not a huge amount of difference, because I've been a consultant for a long time, and I've always worked. I've had times where I've had offices out of the house, just for different things. I really liked WeWork. I did that for quite a while, and I'm going to start using that again, just to break it up. You have to kind of get out of where you're at, to get your creativity flowing in. So anyway, pretty much all my clients are remote if they can be. I'm trying to think of any of them that aren't in one way, shape, or form another. But in the tech industry, we've done a lot of remote work anyway, for a long time,
Right. Well, you're planning some new applications as well. And before the show, you kind of said, all right, I've got a couple more big hurrahs left in me. And you're planning for these applications to live multiple decades. And I recognize that a lot of developers have maybe built some applications, but haven't had a chance to see their code live for multiple decades. They've just seen maybe inherited somebody else's multiple decade code and like ripped their hair out. So what is your experience and what is your process to go through to plan for applications that live a long time and make sure that these are good applications that don't just end up as trash that other developers down the road want to throw away and start over?
Yeah, this was actually kind of a fun topic, and it's actually one that's new. So this is actually going to be the going back to Code Magazine real quick. I'll let you know kind of where these thoughts pop into my head, because I'm always thinking about building software, how people build software, creativity in software, and everything else. So I write an editorial every issue. So every other month I have to crank out about 1,000 words on something.
Yeah.
And it's hard. Everybody thinks, I want to write. Everybody asks me when they come write for me for Code Magazine, can I do a column? It's like, yeah, write 6 articles for me for 6 issues in a row without me asking you, and then I'll consider. Because it's hard. Yeah. It's not as easy. Everybody thinks they can write a column. It's like, yeah, you're good for 1 or 2 because you have a couple of thoughts, and then you're done, and then I have to find somebody else. But anyway, so my editorial that I thought of is, and the title is, I'm going to be a little long on this one, but I want to make sure I explain the context of it. It's going to be, these are my last applications. So you talked about how long I've been consulting. I'm 53, and I don't care about age or anything like that. I've been doing this for a long time. I started my consulting business in my early 20s. I was the young gun at the time, of that crowd, and now I'm not. You can see on the camera because we're on video. My hair is a lot grayer, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm 53 years old, and I built, and so I'm saying that I have some greenfield applications that are coming up that are going to be very sizable, very important to the businesses that we're building them for. And I came to the conclusion, it's like, these aren't going to be my last big ones, probably. And I don't want to say they're the last things I'm going to work on, because they're definitely not, because I'm not old enough to stop yet.
Yeah.
But what's going to happen is these applications are going to live for a long time. And I kind of, when we started, I was kind of telling you how I quote unquote date these applications. How old are they? And I treat them like children. So I have 2 applications right now that are entering the 3rd grade, right? I have one client, the application's 9 years old. I guess 9 years old is probably almost 4th grade, right?
Yep.
Third or fourth grade.
That's right.
Right in there. So getting out of 3rd, going into 4th grade. So I have 2 of them. I actually open up the databases and I look at the first records that got written. I'm like, oh my God, these things are that old.
Yeah.
I had an application that we rewrote in the .NET stack. I think it was a couple of years ago that it got done. Right pre-COVID is when it kind of rolled out. It was almost of drinking age. So it was, we could have taken that application to the bar for drinks. It was legal to drink. In some countries, it was definitely legal to drink, but in the States, it's 21 years of age to drink, right? That application lived 21 years, and I was floored to think about how long it survived. And so I'm using that as my barometer in terms of these applications I'm building. They're mission critical apps for these businesses, and they're going to outlive my career. They will live 20 years. Or more, very likely. And I guarantee you, when I'm 73 years old, I'm not going to be slinging code. Well, I might. I like doing what I do, but I can see myself traveling. And 73 years old, I'm probably going to be retired, hopefully. Or dabbling, or just, pure consult. I don't know what I'm going to be doing.
You'll be advising over Zoom because you like to talk to people.
Yeah, pretty much. Hopefully. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, it'll be interesting. I don't know where the roads are going to take me then, but that gives me context when I'm building these applications. And you never realize how long because we just build applications and we put them out into the wild, and you really don't know how they're being used or for what, because you build them a lot of times for a customer. One of these applications I was talking about is a piece of museum software that is 9 years old and has 1,200 museums in it. And we started with 5, and over the 9 years, they've added 1,200 to it. And I'm like, you have to be kidding me. There's that many in this thing. And this one, we actually just rewrote it. So we're moving it out of Ruby on Rails into .NET for reasons, just because of support and stuff like that, because they don't have enough Linux help.
Yeah. Ruby's kind of legacy at this point. I mean, a lot of places, just from a support perspective and market share and developer availability.
That's a whole other story for a whole other podcast. So
I'm going to get hate
there's
now.
a whole there's a new term. It's called stack shaming, right? So,
oh yeah,
and there's a lot of stack shaming that goes on with the youngsters, right? That, oh my God, anyway, that's another pod. We'll do it another day. Talk about stack shaming.
Hey, you've got clients that have Fox Pro that's still going to live for another couple decades. I've got clients with Access that's never going to go away.
Yeah. No, because these things are very, very expensive to replace.
Yeah.
And it's very hard rewriting applications is a lot of times harder than building them from the ground up.
Yeah.
Because then when you redo them, you have to put all that quirky logic back in there that may or may not have been a bug, but that's how it works today and needs to continue working that way.
Many thanks to our podcast sponsor, ClearMeasure. ClearMeasure is a software architecture company that empowers clients' development teams to be self-sufficient, moving fast, delivering quality, and running their systems with confidence. Whether starting a new project or developing new technologies or techniques, ClearMeasure sets up your team to deliver world-class results. Learn more at www.clearmeasure.com. ClearMeasure, empowering software delivery.
And every listener needs to read Fred Brooks's The Second System Effect, that old essay from his Mythical Man Month book. Those forces don't change.
Yeah, let's keep adding junk to the thing. And well, that's what happens is these applications, if you build them right, you don't add junk to them. They just keep growing and growing and growing. And then, hopefully you can replace the pieces that theoretically you needed to replace. And I've had it happen. So I have a whole editorial on. There was an HTML5 feature that we used that went away. They used to have SQLite kind of baked into the web browsers, and that went away like almost overnight. And so luckily I'd built all my stuff with a common set of middleware for this. I had this form router tool. So it's always a theory that I can replace these things.
Yeah.
And until you meet the enemy, as they say in Sun Tzu, you don't know. Your plans are great until you meet the enemy the first time, right? Isn't that Sun Tzu, The Art of War, one of the topics?
Yeah, I think Mike Tyson translated it. You got a plan until you get punched in the face.
Exactly. Everybody has a plan. Yes. Anyway, so you try and plan, and then you hope that your plans work, right? You hope that those things that you laid down there were common middleware or common repository classes or common whatever, that you can tear the guts out and replace them on a moving vehicle as it's going. Because that's a lot of times what these are. They're moving vehicles that you have to. Yeah. You have to repair them in flight. You don't have a long window to do it. So I don't know that there's really a science to that. I think there's a lot of thought and there's a lot of ways to build. So, and there's a little bit of luck involved. So hopefully, that's one. And I don't know if you can plan for that, but you need to anticipate that these things are going to live a long time. And then refactoring is important. So it's like, when do you bite the bullet and rebuild pieces of the code that you know? So we have one of my clients, we have our own workflow system, and it got to be so far bailing wired and bubble gummed together. It's like, because you start with like, oh, we need to do X and Y, right? We'll just make it do X and Y. And when X finishes, we'll just have it trigger Y. Well, it's like, okay, now we need to do X, Y, and Z. So when X finishes, we need to do Y. But if it's in this stack, we have to do Python running. If it's in that stack, you have to do SAS for statistics. It's like, okay, so now I got these branches. So it's like, well, I'll put another couple if statements, if X, Y, boom, boom, boom. It's like, well, oh, by the way, we got this fourth thing we need to do in part of this process. Okay, pause, time to stop. As soon as you have to notice there's patterns, these anti-patterns that you find. And they're not anti-patterns initially, because sometimes they work. and eventually they will turn into an anti-pattern. And you have to pay attention. You have to go, I can't do this anymore because the costs are getting way too high. When we add the fifth thing, then my branching is out. So 2 months ago, we sat down and said, we have all these processes. How can we do this better? So we essentially said, okay, we're going to make all these things. We're going to build we built our own kind of queuing workflowing system. We call recipes, do A, do B, do C. And we did it on the worst day of the week possible. So we do all this processing on a Wednesday, but it was the only day that me and the developer that worked on it together we had to roll it all out at one time. Couldn't roll a piece. You had to do it all in one shot. So we sat in a hotel room at LAX, and we knew our windows of time during the day that were the safer times. So it's like the flows run, but there's like hour windows in the middle of the day. It's like, okay, shut them all down, put the code out, turn them all on, and let's see how we do it. And so it by the end of the day, it was all work. We replaced the entire engine of the truck running during the day. And one of our managers there, our ops managers, she's like, why did you do that during the day today? Well, don't ever do that again. It's like, you know what? We know we never do this. We never do it on a Wednesday. Wednesday is the worst day possible to do it. We never do it. We did because it was the only day that worked. For some reason, our calendars, we had to do it then. So we mitigated it. But long story short, that workflow system was built to solve the cruft that we had from band-aiding this thing together over years, right? So that's that you have to anticipate. You have to pay attention to the way you're building your applications, and that helps the longevity as well. And knowing the pieces that you can rip out and rebuild. Now, the cool thing about this is because we tore that whole thing out, now we've augmented the new thing a lot. So to replay an old workflow, you had to start at the beginning and run through the whole flow. So now the way we did the stack is you can say, I want to start this workflow now from step 7 instead of going through the first 6 steps to get to 7. And we couldn't have done that without tearing the engine out and rebuilding it. But we didn't know to rebuild the engine until it got pain. I guess it's just understanding pain. You have to understand that you're just doing ceremony to make it work. But a lot of times that's reality. You have to get it done and move on, but you have to take the time to notice where your problems are. I think that's probably one of the biggest things is knowing where your pain is. And every system has pain. They always do because they live a long time. And your assumptions that you make in the beginning change later on. Your business changes. We had to change a search engine out where we were using Solar before, and now we're using Elasticsearch on Amazon, or they call it Open Search now. So those parameters change. And then converting websites is a really interesting problem because people bookmark your site. Mm-hmm. And those bookmarks that were URLs in a Ruby pattern before, you have to continue to work. So you do a lot of URL rewriting, or you make sure your controller methods work exactly the same way. Right. Luckily, MVC, the way most of the vendors have kept that consistent usually. So that's an easier problem to solve now.
You have really old pieces of software, and they've been running, serving those businesses. So you finished those old pieces of software. You started them and finished them, and now they're running. And you got them into a situation where it didn't require you babysitting them every day for all these years. I see systems out there where companies have them, and then they have to have a full-time developer just to keep it working because of various things that happen. What's your thought process been to make these applications that have run for all these years and you're not chained to them?
That's an interesting question. I am chained to them, but I try and make them where they don't require care and feeding.
Well, that's what
they do. They just have to run. They don't always run. And then generally I get called in when they quit in the middle of the night or, whatever. It has to do with laziness, really. Laziness is a good quality among a software developer. I don't want to do it. I don't want to manually run these things. So I generally build the tools that put the things that I don't want to run in the end user's hands and let them do it and give them the a lot of these systems, I think one of the things that people don't really appreciate in the world is that there's lots of people in the background keeping things alive. And I've worked in the banking industry, and you would be surprised at how much care and feeding giant systems have, because things just break for no reason whatsoever. An integration point breaks, something you didn't anticipate breaks, whatever. But I think some of it has to do with laziness. And I try and make the software. I don't even know. I don't know. Maybe I'm just trying to find an answer to the question.
Well, you said put control in the user's hands.
Yeah.
So you're planning these two new long-lived applications. How does that manifest? What do you mean control in the user's hands?
Like, we have an automated scheduling system to run workflows, and inevitably a piece of the automated system will die. It'll die in the middle. So they have a couple of choices. They can call us to reschedule the job, or we give them applications of the user interface to manually fire a job off themselves. We say, just go to the portal, pick this option, put the options in, and fire it off, and it'll just run. So outside of the schedule, which I don't control, because there's like operation stuff that goes on inside of clients that I do my best to stay out of it. I don't want to be in the operational flow of their stuff, because it's really difficult for me to do that. It's really hard as a consultant, because I'm gone. I'm at a client. I'm at a meeting.
Yeah.
And when your order processing system breaks in the middle of the day, or something didn't run, you have to give them the tools to do it, to start that thing up. So I think a lot of it's just building, and they don't have to be glamorous tools or bulletproof tools. They have to be expert level tools, where it's like, if you have access to the screen, you know what you're doing. Theoretically, I hope you know what you're doing, because we put the weapon in your hand, and we hope you know how to use it properly, that you feed the parameters in the right way. So a lot of it is just exposing just enough of the guts to let them manage the system. And then if that doesn't work, then they can call you. So you kind of build these escalation points in, I guess, where it's like, here's the things you need to try. Did you try X? Did you try Y? Okay, fine. I'll jump on and I'll help you now, because something's not right. Yeah. Or the other thing that we do too is we have lots of, we have telemetry in there, but not telemetry in a metric sense. We have telemetry, and when stuff dies, it alerts us. Like, we have heartbeats. Heartbeats is a key thing that we have. We have processes that run that check in. When was the last time this heartbeat hit? And if the heartbeats get out of parameter, we get emails. So a lot of times we've already solved problems for the clients before they even know it, because like, we got the heartbeat died. It's like, well, that server did something, or Windows update died in the middle, or who knows what.
Yeah.
But we know you have to put logging and telemetry are huge things, and that a lot of people don't do it. I'm actually kind of surprised in it, and I'm a late adopter to the logging thing, but over the last probably 10 years, logging is like essential, just so you know what your system's doing. I like logging on, because I just go into certain screens and just check the system and go, okay. And then as you get your logs, you get more sophisticated. I want timings in my logs. So now I can do more than just, did it run? How fast did it run? So is it out of band? You can start doing stuff like that. So I guess there are answers to this question. It's a deep question. It's like, it kind of caught me out of left field, but those are things that we do.
Some other companies might think, I got to have some people that are ops, and the ops people, they have access to reschedule jobs and look at logs and all that. But you're saying, no, give it to the users. Let them be more self-service where it fits.
They know what's going on better than you do. The users do, because they're in charge of dealing with the customers and go, my reports didn't show up this morning. Why?
Yeah.
I think every company has ops. It just, is it a formal title or not?
Yeah.
99% of the time it's not formal. It's everybody's got ops, because they're a business and they have people that know what's going on. Hopefully they're not just willy-nilly not. So. Right.
I run across probably a couple of companies every year that have never built some custom software for themselves. And they're always, they have this idea, and they have no concept of budgeting for development or ops of this thing after they built it. They're thinking, okay, I'm going to allocate a chunk of money. It's going to be built, and then I'm going to be finished spending money on this, or and have to kind of talk them through what's your ongoing budget.
They don't realize that there's care and feeding on these custom apps. Actually, the custom apps is an expensive process for people too.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But I guess ultimately we're always in maintenance mode. Actually, I thought when you started this line of questioning, you're like, these apps are done. It's like, that's like saying that I found the last bug.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, okay.
Right.
No,
right.
you didn't. They're never done. These things live longer than you ever anticipate.
Right.
I had one of my very early applications way back when I started my consulting business was for a hospital in Seattle where they scheduled interpreters. And we built this Foxborough app. It had like 3 screens to it. And like 5 years later, they called me and they're like, we need some extra stuff added to this. I'm like, you're running that thing still? It still works?
Yeah.
And they have band-aided it, and there were memo fields and note fields. They put all these funky codes in to make it do extra stuff that you never intended it to do. Same thing happens today. I build tools that people build things with. So I have a manufacturing company in New York, and they are on packing lines for food plants. They do palletizing and all that. So we built a tool where they could build screens with it. And I'm going out there next week, and I can't wait to see what they're doing with it. But it's like they can adjust barcode scanner or photo scanners from our software now that I don't even know how they do it. It shows photos of the production line running. They've surfaced that up. It's this cool WPF app that I have no clue how they did any of this, but we built a tool to build tools with, and they've done it. And I'm like, okay.
Nice.
You never know what people are going to do with your software either. That's the other thing, is people are very resilient and very creative, very resourceful. Right? They will figure out how to make your software do stuff you never thought it was going to do. So
awesome. Well, as we wrap up, are there any, if people are creating a brand new application today, they have the chance to do greenfield or do a replacement, they're like, okay, all these problems, I've been mucking with code that I inherited, but now I get to build one for myself, and I'm not going to make all the mistakes that everybody else made, and then I had to inherit their code. What types of education or books or magazines or patterns, what should they be devouring right now so that they can do their greenfield well? And
I've got one. It's not sitting here right now. There's a new book out, and I want to preface this a little bit. So there's about a 1,800 page book from Google on how they build their development teams.
Oh,
it's a great book. I'll have to get you the link to it.
Okay.
I'm reading it, and I have a hard time sitting down and reading a lot of these books back to back, or just finding the time to do it. But this one intrigued me because there's team dynamics. And in terms of Google, their problem set is nobody's problem set is like Google.
Yeah.
I'm just sorry. You're just never going to work in that space unless you work for Google or Facebook or one of the big giant companies.
Yeah.
The problem set that they have is vastly different than the vast majority of developers that we deal with. Most of our apps, 90% of the stuff out there can be done with an ASP.NET Core app.
Yeah.
Without a lot of rigmarole.
Low scale.
The vast majority of them. Yeah. Low scale, simple, easy. I don't need lambdas. I can do a load balancing. Anyway, there's lots of simple stuff. But reading a book like this is great because it gives you an idea of team dynamics, because they have giant teams, but they break down into smaller teams, and they talk about how that works, how to communicate issues, how to add telemetry to your apps and all that. So I'm just scratching the surface on the book. It's an amazing book. And then there's another one that I have. I wish I had them sitting here, because this other one is one of the best software architecture books I've seen. It's very practical in nature, and very surprising in some of the techniques. And I'll get you that one too. But it's a different way of looking at how to write code. And I the name of it is just totally out of my head right now.
Okay.
But I'll get you the links. But both of these books are really good because they turn a lot of the things you have. Though the engineering one turns kind of a lot of thoughts you have on its head. Things you think about code differently based on this book, which I like, or architecture differently.
So look in the show notes. We'll have the names and the links to both of those books in the show notes. Well, Rod, I really appreciate you coming back on the show.
Anytime.
It's always good to have you. And I'm sure as I was, the listeners are fascinated just kind of hearing your thought process, because you've got more experience dripping from your pinky finger than a lot of people. So it's awesome.
I enjoy it. It's funny, is it's still after 30 plus years of doing this, I still enjoy it. It's still fun, which is a really cool thing about it. It's like, every day is not a grind. It's a fun, we're lucky. We're lucky to be in this business because it's always interesting.
Well, that's what I tell my kids, because I've 3 kids living at home. Find something that is out there in the market, obviously, that you like to do, that people will pay you to do. Don't just go finding something that's a job that you have no interest in. The best trick you can play on life is to get somebody to pay you for something that you started out doing as a hobby.
Yep, exactly. And you'll be happy every day.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thanks again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And until next time, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure DevOps Podcast, a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Go to www.azuredevops.show for show notes and other episodes. On behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, and our sponsors, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.